Windows just baked in a tiny language model that runs entirely on your device and responds in milliseconds. Meanwhile, Google dropped a new open-source music model that can jam live switch instruments mid-bar and follow prompts in real time, right in your browser. Then, there's Similar, a new AI agent that quietly handles your web chores while you stay in control. And OpenAI's hardware deal with Johnny Y4 just hit legal trouble. A trademark lawsuit forced them to wipe all mentions even as they tease what might be the most advanced tech ever made. Everything's accelerating. So here's what you need to know. Alright, I want to kick off with something lurking right inside Windows itself. Microsoft quietly slid a micro model called MW into the new Copilot Plus PCs. And honestly, it's wild how much horsepower they squeezed into 330 million parameters. Instead of processing your request piece by piece, like most models do, MW works smarter. It breaks your question down, once holds the meaning in memory, and then builds a response from that. So it's not wasting time rereading the whole thing, thanks to this setup. And because it runs directly on a special chip called the Neural Processing Unit, it replies much faster, almost twice as quick for that first word, and nearly 5 times faster overall compared to similar models. So when you type something like dim the keyboard backlight, after 5 minutes into your settings, it responds instantly. No cloud, no delay, to keep things efficient. The team designed MW to share certain pieces of its own internal structure, and they divided the workload so the chip can do multiple things at once. Without slowing down, they also added techniques that help it keep track of longer conversations without getting confused while using less memory for training. They didn't just feed it random internet data. They started with high-quality educational material, then distilled knowledge from larger, more powerful models. So MW could be smart without needing to be huge. But knowing how to understand language isn't enough. They needed MW to understand how to actually change Windows settings. So they trained it with over 3.5 million examples, covering everything from screen brightness to privacy options. They added variations, typos, and all sorts of phrasings to make sure it could handle real-world messiness. After fine-tuning, it performed nearly as well as much larger models, but stayed lightweight and incredibly fast with some additional optimization. They got it down to run on local chips with no slowdown, outputting more than 200 words per second on devices like the Surface Laptop 7. The end result: when you ask it something complex, it replies in under half a second. And for quick one-word searches, it still uses regular search under the hood, so you don't get weird guesses. Even better, if you have 2 monitors and ask to adjust brightness, it'll ask which one you mean, so it doesn't go adjusting both. Like a blunt tool swinging from Windows to music. Google's Magenta team just dropped Magenta, real-time Magenta RT for short. And in the generative audio scene, it's a genuine left hook. The model is open weight under Apache 2.0, 0 lives on GitHub and Hugging Face, and clocks in at 800 million parameters. That's hefty. But here's the kicker. It turns out 2 seconds of 48 kHz stereo in about 1.25 seconds on a free tier Colab TPU. That forward real-time factor of roughly 0.625 means you can actually jam live feed-it style prompts mid-performance and never wait for a giant batch render under the hood. The pipeline looks familiar if you've peeked at Music LM or Music FX, except Magenta RT rolls everything into a streamer. Music audio is broken into discrete codec tokens, and each segment is conditioned on a running 10-second history, plus your text or even a tiny audio clip, mapped through a joint embedding called Music Coco. That hybrid of Mulan and Coco lets a phrase like lo-fi house groove with warm roads blend seamlessly with a 4-bar guitar lick you just recorded, and the model keeps the vibe consistent as new chunks roll in. Applause, laughter, training used around 190,000 hours of instrumental stock tracks, all passed through a hierarchical neural codec, so fidelity stays crisp, while token sequences stay short. The transformer itself is optimized for chunked streaming. Every two-conned window is generated with overlapping boundaries to avoid clicks, and XLA compilation, plus heavy cache reuse, keeps device memory from thrashing Google claims. You can morph genre or instruments in the middle of a bar, go from synthwave to bossa nova piano, without dropping tempo, and because the repo is self-hostable, no one's locking you into an API bill or throttled rate limits. They're already hinting at on-device inference pathways and personal fine-tunes, so DJs or game devs can bake in their own sonic fingerprints, compared with diffusion approaches like refusion, or big auto-regressive beasts like OpenAI's Jukebox. Magenta RT's low latency is the breakthrough. You're steering the ship in real time instead of waiting minutes for a WAV file to dump while we're talking. Local Agents, a tiny startup called Similar, wants to reinvent web browsing on the Mac. Ditching the usual cloud-hosted puppetry simulator spins up a fully sandboxed WebKit window right on your desktop and shadows every click you make. The whole dance stays on device, so every cookie login token and autofill scrap lives on your SSD, instead of zipping off to some distant data center. The whole point is shared control. The agent gets to drive, but you never lose the wheel if it tries to slam the buy button too soon. Or misreads a CAPTCHA, you just nudge it aside with the trackpad, overrate a form, or steer to a different tab. No forced handoff dialogue, no lag, no anxious wait. While a remote model replays the page, Dom, the founders, cut their teeth on multi-agent systems at DeepMind, so they built the open-source S2 framework. Under Similar, like a modular pit crew, a Heil planner sketches the goal, a vision layer reads live pixels to spot buttons, smaller subagents handle scrolling or text entry, and a short-term memory thread keeps track of what was clicked 2 minutes ago. That architecture is why the thing posted a 90.05% 5% completion score on the messy real-site Web Voyager benchmark, and still edged out OpenAI and Anthropic on O-World and Android World, where half the tasks involve pop-ups, infinite scroll, and badly labeled inputs. You'd expect to trip any bot early. Adopters say it's already saving them from the grinding stuff. One user had it juggle a 3-store grocery run for a weekend cookout, dumping sriracha into Instacart bio buns, into Amazon Fresh, and a specialty cake into a local bakery's commerce portal, all while popping up a quick sound, good confirmation before each checkout. Another kept it running in the background to pull tracking numbers from 5 different e-commerce sites, scrape every in-transit status, and drop a tidy summary into Notion. There's even a clip of a journalist letting Similar harvest a dozen research articles, boil them down to tidy abstracts, and then handing control back so she could cherry-pick quotes because everything's local. The agent logs into those paywalled sites with the same keychain creds you'd use in Safari. Nothing leaks outward, nothing's stored off device, and if you hit Wi-Fi turbulence on a train, the workflow doesn't collapse. That blend of autonomy plus instant override is the big philosophical swing the team doesn't think people will trust fully hands-free browsers for years. So, Similar acts more like a diligent coworker who gladly pushes the mail cart, but still taps you when a signature is required. And yeah, speaking of trust, OpenAI managed to stumble into a trademark tangle that forced a vanishing act. Remember the buzzy partnership with Example design legend Johnny Thowell. They announced a $6.5 billion acquisition of his hardware shop called I/O Planning Ultra Minimal AI Devices. Well, a hearing aid startup called IYO sued over the almost identical name, and a court slapped a takedown order on OpenAI's promo material overnight. The blog post and slick 9-minute video of I've chatting with Sam Altman disappeared from OpenAI.com, though you can still find the clip floating on YouTube. OpenAI's spokesperson Kayla Wood says the deal itself is totally intact. They just have to scrub the branding until lawyers sort it out. Iviv, who walked away from Apple back in 2019 after sketching icons like the iPhone, Apple Watch, and AirPods, sounded giddy in the video. He told Altman that everything he's learned in 30 years led to this moment. Altman, meanwhile, flashed a prototype and called it the coolest piece of technology that the world will have ever seen. Details are scarce, but insiders keep describing an unobtrusive desktop companion that stays aware of your environment and fits naturally alongside a MacBook Pro and iPhone. The release isn't expected until next year. Yet, the legal snag shows how even giants can trip over trademarks when hardware ambitions meet the messy real world. Alright, that's the scoop for today. If you're tinkering with any of these, let me know how they fit into your stack.